Welcome to Derry. It is me, Steve Barnes from Sweet Child of Time, and I'm here with Lindsay Dunn from One of My Stories. We're going to be talking about our upcoming series, Welcome to Derry. Lindsay, take it from here. What's up, Lindsay? Ahoy there and all that stuff.
Ahoy, Steve. It feels a little odd to be saying ahoy for Welcome to Derry, but We'll go with that.
Well, I mean, they do have a dock there, so it is like a town that will have boats, and you might greet a sailor as he comes into the port, the Derry dock or whatever. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll think of something better for next time.
Yeah, well, ahoy to you. But yes, it's been a while since we talked, Steve.
Yeah, it has. The last time we really talked is when you came to my town, not Derry. I'm from the town of Richmond, Virginia, and that's the last time we really talked. Is that what you're talking about? That's been like a month and a half, maybe 2 months.
Well, we had an in-person visit. I think that was in the month of September. So, yes, actually happened. But I was thinking, it's been a while since we podcasted together. I think our last podcast conversation.
Yep.
Because that's our real friendship is based on talking to each other through microphones.
Yeah, that's right.
The last time we had a podcast together, it was to discuss the movie Here.
Oh, okay, that's right. I was thinking it might have been His Three Daughters, which has a tie-in to Welcome to Derry because one of the actors is in both of those movies and show. But yeah, we did Tom Hanks Here. The gang from Forrest Gump. We didn't love that one. I hope we're going to love Welcome to Derry a lot more. I have a feeling we will.
Right. But I guess my point is that it's been a while since we recapped a show together.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
We have, if you've been listening to either one of us for a while, which of course you are loyal listeners it's only loyal listeners that are tuning in. But we have recapped the show Dark.
Yes, that was the big one.
We have also separately recapped 1899 with different people. Yep. And then we had moved to 100 Years of Solitude.
Mm-hmm. That was some intense conversation too. I liked it.
So we're kind of returning to form, I feel. Yeah. And all right, so what is this show? Okay, so it's Welcome to Derry, Season 1, which is set in 1962. Now, if you are, probably you're familiar with this, listeners, but this is based on the Stephen King universe. And the town of Derry has a dark and violent history where bad things happen every 27 years.
Or so.
It will be, time can be fluid. Time's a flat circle. So it's 8 episodes released on Sunday evenings. It's going to release on HBOMax starting October 26th, which is coming up this week. And we will be planning to drop weekly recaps on the Thursday after each episode, Lord willing.
That's right. I'm going to interrupt you real quick and say that's going to be due thanks to a third person who's involved in our podcast here too. That's James McCullum from the Marshland Media. He's going to be the one who's going to be doing this editing for us. So he's going to be really on the gun to get these released in time. So he's probably listening to this right now too, sweating. So we got to give a big thanks to him for being part of this and helping us get it on so quickly after each episode.
Get your perspiration reducing shorts on, James. We appreciate you stepping up. So one thing I wanted to mention here about the kind of just introduction to the show before we go further is that the 3 seasons are going to be taking place in 1962. That's this season, Season 1. Cool. Then 1935 will be Season 2.
Oh.
And Season 3 will be 1908. So we have our 3 years already established of what is going to be the time periods. Now, before we go further into the plot of the show, I thought it might be interesting or relevant to think about why we are doing this in the first place, as we always like to stop and ask, why are we doing this show? Why did it catch our interest? And there's a couple things that I can think of. So I'll let you start that, Steve. What are some reasons we might want to recap this show?
I'll correct you. we don't ask ourselves that. You ask us that because the main reason that I do these shows, that I agree to the shows, is because I love them and I want to recap and be part of a show that either I love or I think I'm going to love. I took some chances with 1899 and Time Bandits, 100 Years of Solitude, and now with this, because we're going into it, we don't know what the show is going to be like, but it's something that catches my interest. Second, for me, it has to have something to do with the concept of time to fit in with the theme of my show. So, of course, this is something that happens like every 27-ish years.
Right.
27 is my lucky number, and it always has been. Like, that's my birth date as well, 7/27/72. So that's special to me. And Stephen King was the first author that I really got into when I was a kid. This would be like early to late 80s. So I was on board with all these books. The moment they were released, I had the original copy of it, got it as soon as it was released because I was a huge fan of him. I was too young. Me and all these other kids were way too young to be reading this stuff, but we were. So for me, that's 3 solid reasons, because I love Stephen King. I'm looking forward to watching this show with my wife, and because it is related to time. So one of my stories, why did Lindsay Dunn, LD, choose to check out Welcome to Derry and want to do a recap?
Well, you left me some reasons, so I'm glad about that, Steve.
Okay.
So, one thing I think we should mention is, I was already planning on watching the show, but I wouldn't necessarily have planned to recap it because that takes a different level of effort, right? But one thing we know or think we know is that in season 2, which is going to be our 1935, Barenbow Odar and Yantcha Fries have been posting on Instagram that they are in LA working with Andy Muschietti. And if you look at the IMDb credits, you are not going to see that because supposedly he's not coming on board until season 2.
Right.
So we wanted to sort of get ahead of the game. We can't just start recapping season 2. I mean, we could, but we might as well be completionist about it and start with season 1. But I do think also this show is very much on par because of the time issue, but not just that it has something to do with time, but it has something to do with cycles. And that's a repeating thing from Dark, right? That there's the 33-year cycle.
Oh, yeah.
Now we've got the 27-year cycle or the 30-year cycle if you're looking at the adaptation, the earlier adaptation, the miniseries. They talked about a 30-year cycle. And in the book and in this Muschietti's universe, he's going back to the 27-year cycle. So we got the idea of cycles and things repeating themselves, almost like a fatality. So it's got some, it reminds me of Dark in that way too, that these are things that we've seen done well. So I think we're going to be able to recognize if this is done well in this show as well.
Sure, yeah. And this show has like the blessing of the man himself. Stephen King has seen the first episode. And that's one of the tabs that I have open here is what Stephen King has said about what he's seen so far. He said the show is amazing and terrifying, given the show his enthusiastic approval. His shared positive reaction on Threads is a strong endorsement, significantly because Stephen King has often been critical of his adaptations in the past. So if he's saying this one rules, then on this podcast, we're proud to say, yes, King. Okay.
Sure. We'll do that. No king, but Stephen King. Nice.
No kings, but Stephen King. Okay. And our king, the king of kings. Okay.
Okay. So let's now move into what we know about the plot of the show, or again, think we know. The published information, they're keeping it wisely, pretty close to the cuff, which I always appreciate when you're not giving away all the secrets and what's going to happen. But we do have a couple of things to go on. We have the new episode, the pilot description has been updated on IMDb.
Yep.
And then we also knew some of the characters that are going to show up in the show, and that being familiar. So the pilot episode, Steve's raising his hand. What would you like to say, Steve?
Yeah, I wanted to say that it has been pretty well known that a lot of the plot points of these episodes and seasons are going to be based on the interlude chapters of the book It. Now, there's 5 interlude chapters, and those chapters, they go into great detail about the Black Spot, the Bradley Gang, the Silver Dollar, all these incidents as he goes into like a firsthand account, usually from like some old timer from Derry. So we have like beat by beat. When you read these chapters, it's like you're watching an episode of television. So I'm sure it's going to be fantastic stuff. But from what I understand, this is all going to be based on those Derry interlude chapters. That's why I was waving my hand wildly.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, we know about the plot of the show, that it's based on some of that history that has been dropped before. You're absolutely right. I think specifically what I was thinking about was that we know that this is very much revolving around the family of Mike Hanlon, who's one of our losers. But so I'm going to get to that piece of information in a minute. But I did want to read this, summary from the IMDb, that 4 months after the classmate's sudden disappearance, so kids have gone missing again, big surprise. Teddy, Phil, Lily, and Ronnie vow to figure out why so many kids have gone missing in Derry. So we have the 4 main kids, named.
What are the male names again?
Teddy and Phil.
Okay.
Now, Mike's father, Will Hanlon, is not amongst that list of 4.
Right. Not yet. And there's other kids that are named as well. Like I know that there's going to be a kid named Rich, which made me think about Richie, of course. But there's going to be a kid named Rich, and there's going to be a kid named Ray. So I wonder, like we have these 4 in the pilot, and these are probably like the 4 leads, I assume. But I wonder if they'll be joined by 3 other friends along the way, because Stephen King always made such a huge point about how 7 is like a mystical number that the entity of it kind of feared, is like a magical, like good, like white magic number. And I know that you and I had through text messages, we had discussed how, there's some angry Redditors out there who don't like some of the changes that are going to be happening, right? And they're saying, there should be 7 kids in the Losers Club. I really have a strong feeling that this 4 is going to be joined up by a few more.
Well, that's possible. You're getting a little ahead of me, Steve.
Oh, no. We knew this would happen.
Yes. I'm back. Right now, I'm just kind of dealing with the known information about... I forgot about Rich. He's in the trailer.
Yes.
But I was kind of going off of the plot. And then there's this Major Leroy Hanlon who arrives at Derry Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Leroy Hanlon, that name I recognized because that is the grandfather of Mike Hanlon. So we have Leroy and Charlotte Hanlon. We know they are going to be in this series. They're both in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the grandparents of Mike Hanlon. Their son, whose name is Will, that's Mike's father. And we have Dick Halloran as a character also. Now, you probably recognize that name, Steve, Dick Halloran.
Yeah, he was. He's name dropped in the book It as well, because he was participant in the Black Spot incident. But yeah, he's the Shining dude. He's the dude that had the Shining, which is directly related to Derry, Maine, and the whole Macroverse and It itself, because Dick Halloran in The Shining also has these powers that he's able to access that same Macroverse.
Now, as far as you know, is the Black Spot ever referenced in The Shining?
No, he talks about how he was a cook in the army, and that's kind of like his identity. And so that's the same role he plays in the Black Spot, where they open up a kitchen and he's the guy in the back, cooking the burgers and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's running the kitchen at the Overlook Hotel. From The Shining.
Yes.
So that makes sense, because you mentioned he was serving in the kitchen in the military. So
he can't get away from that food. I know.
Because obviously he's an iconic character from The Shining, but I think it's interesting that you said he's name dropped in
the book It during the retelling of the Black Spot.
Yeah. So Steve kind of revisited the book, and plus he's read the book many times. I've actually only read the book one time in its entirety. I tried to read it when I was a kid, and my mom found it under my bed and return it to the library.
So I didn't
read it until 5 years ago. But I rewatched the movies. So yes, I did not get to hear Dick Halloran's name mentioned in the book like Steve did.
See, we're the perfect pair to do this because I didn't rewatch the movies, and I had some questions for you about some of the beats of how the movie ended and how the Battle of Chud or whatever went down, the ritual of Chud, excuse me.
Right.
I also wanted to say in the trailer, I have a couple more notes from the trailer too of what we get to see. Because you mentioned some of the names of people, some more names that I saw on those missing posters, because it shows like missing posters. And I saw the names Clemens, I saw Lynn Jones, and I saw the last name Uris, which of course jumps out at me because of Stan Uris is one of the Losers Club. And apparently like one of his relatives went missing at some point. And another character I saw that Richie from the Losers Club would be very happy to see, the Paul Bunyan statue. I saw that in the trailer too.
Yeah, the Paul Bunyan statue, it's very interesting because that's actually something from, Maine, where Stephen King grew up. And also it relates to the fact that Derry started out as a beaver camp. Okay, so Mike Hanlon's family, just to kind of, I want to review what I know about Mike Hanlon's family and then beyond what I just said already. And then Steve, if you have anything to fill in, that would be great. So what we know is that Will, which is Mike's father again, he witnessed Pennywise as a giant bird after a racist group called the Maine Legion of White Decency burned the Black Spot Club down. In the book, this happens in 1930. In the 2017 movie, it happens in 1962, which gets it Andy Muschietti kind of messing with the timing a little bit.
Yeah.
And then later on in the book, Mike, of course, sees Pennywise as a giant bird at the ironworks. So it's interesting that his father saw Pennywise as a giant bird, and then Mike also sees Pennywise as a giant bird. So I'm like, oh, wow, there's generational trauma going on.
Right.
That this is the same vision in this family, which, you bringing up that Stan Uris's, his ancestor is possibly a missing child, makes me wonder, okay, is there some connection with, like, he sees the creepy lady in the painting, is this something from his family that has been hidden from him?
Yeah, that bird goes back a little bit further too, because his dad tells him, his dad being Will, is telling him that when he was younger, he went and saw a movie with his father, who would be Leroy.
Right.
They went and saw Rodan, and it was like a bird that came and attacked the people. It was like a Japanese movie. And that scared Will, but Will at the same time thought it was funny, but it scared him. It like really hit his emotions. And he shared that movie with his son, Mike, and he also got those same scary feelings from that big old bird. So it's like he like intentionally shared that with Mike, but then also intentionally like shared the fear of it as well and what that could transpire, which I think is really neat. Yeah.
Right. And then tragically, we know that, Will and his wife, who are Mike's parents, die in a house fire when Mike is a baby. And that's what leads Mike to be raised by his grandparents. So one thing I'm curious about with this plot line is that in the trailer, we see Leroy and Charlotte, and we see Mike. We don't see Will. So I'm wondering if Will is in this series or if he's already died by now.
Or maybe he'll show up in season 2, perhaps.
But that's supposed to be before, because like they've moved the black spot from 1930 to 1962. So I'm assuming the black spot thing is going to be part of season 1.
I hope so, because that's really what I'm looking forward to seeing and like getting into that whole dichotomy.
He doesn't mean that he's looking forward to seeing Mike Hanlon's family burned to pieces.
No.
He's just intrigued how it will play out on screen.
I mean, I was just reading one of those chapters a couple days ago, and like there was some action scenes involved, and Dick Halloran is a hero, and I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff with that, and that whole group. There's a lot of politics. We're gonna get into it throughout the season.
Yeah, it's interesting that or not interesting. I use the word interesting probably too much, but
it's interesting.
One thing I think that is disturbing is that there's this generational trauma going on, and Mike's father witnessed this burning done by this racist group. And then later on, he himself dies in a burning house.
Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah, that is interesting. You're right.
There's kind of a connection with burning. And like if something scared you or scarred you from an earlier time in your life, you would probably fear that for the rest of your life. Like if you stepped on a thumbtack, you'd probably always be looking for where you walked. Will you step on a thumbtack again?
Absolutely. I wasn't quite aware of all that because I just know the book version, which of course this house fire thing doesn't happen in the book. So I guess is that a thing that was predominant in the movies? Like, did we watch Will's parents and did we meet Leroy in the movies?
We meet Leroy in both movie versions. In the more recent one, directed by Muschietti, the Hanlon family are like sheep herders, sheep farmers, as opposed to butchers or meat people.
Okay. Not me, that's for sure.
In the books, they work in like a butchery. He is preparing meat. And they changed it for whatever reason to herding sheep and goats, because there's this whole thing about Mike having to shoot the sheep with the gun in its head to like paralyze it, basically. And they use that on Pennywise later. But yeah, we see Leroy because Leroy is raising Mike. And so there's the scenes that Mike has at home. He interacts with the grandfather. And Mike, saw his parents. He was in this situation. He was a young baby, and his parents were burning in the next room, and they couldn't get out. And he was too young to do anything about it because he was like in a little playpen or something and couldn't get out.
Okay.
But he remembers that, and Pennywise kind of uses that. We don't really see the bird, I think, in the movies, but we see people burning and their hands are sticking out the door.
I mean, in the trailer, we clearly see a bird, and we see like the bird nest. And so, I mean, the bird's going to make an appearance in the season 1. I know this.
Yes. So I'm ready to move on from the Hanlon family, unless you have anything else to add there.
Nope. Moving on, Hanlons.
So you were going to talk about the black spot. Was there anything else you wanted to say about that?
I mean, I could talk for a couple of moments about like the history of it and how it transpired and exactly what it is. Is that what I should do?
Yeah. What do you remember about the black spot incident?
Sure. Well, I mean, the black spot itself is like a bar, because they wouldn't allow any of the black soldiers from Company E in any of the town bars. So they gave them this old shed kind of as a joke, like, here, you got this is your bar now. But they fixed it up really nice, and they put a kitchen in the back. We already talked about that. Dick Halloran worked in there, and they had a jazz band among themselves because there was like 20-ish guys in this company. And they also had like white friends that would come by. And eventually the whole town was all into this place because this was the only place you could get like real good jazz music. All those other bars were like country bars. All the white boys were over there. Black spot's where it's at. Well, it got really popular, and the people in town were into it, but the higher ups, the racists, so to speak, didn't want to see any sort of black organization succeed. So they meant to scare them. So they were just going to like come there with pitchforks and do the KKK thing. Ended up burning the place down, probably with the help of the town itself, because we know the town itself is a hotbed of hatred and it can ignite passions easily. And Pennywise usually has a say in these kind of things. And sure enough, a bird with red balloons made its appearance in the black spot as it was burning down. Just a few people escaped, but about 60 people ended up either died or injured at the black spot. And this whole incident was proudly put on by the White Decency Group or something. You said their name before. I forget what the name is called.
Legion of White Decency.
Yeah, we shouldn't know their name, but that's what it is. And just like everything else that happens in Derry, the town just kind of let this happen. Because things happen in Derry and people just kind of stand aside when it happens. So yeah, that's the tragedy of the black spot.
As you were talking about the incident of the black spot, I couldn't help but think about the movie Sinners.
Oh,
have you seen
definitely.
that, Steve?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the kind of the same thing. They bought this beat up old barn that apparently, we find out later, spoilers, that the KKK is using as
they read
lynching.
it.
Yeah.
There's no question.
It's a black empowering black spot story because it ends the total opposite way. They are not allowed to wreak vengeance or violence upon those people. It's only the vampires that get to wreak violence. So, that's...
I didn't realize a direct correlation there. They had to have known the story of the black spot and have read it and kind of did their own loose adaptation of it. Now that you're saying this, there's no doubt in my mind. Come at me, please, but seems clear.
Yeah. So I already kind of mentioned this, but just to clarify, as we're talking about time, Andy Muschietti, he altered the timeline from the books. So in the books, not the book, but the book it takes place in two time periods, 1957 to 1958, which is the Losers Club as kids, and 1984 to 1985, which is the Losers as adults. So in the Muschietti movies, the kids exist in 1989 and the adults exist in 2017, which is why there's these discrepancies between the years. But since Muschietti started that universe, he has to kind of continue to abide by those rules. And so he's doing that by kind of bumping things up every 20 years. So if you're a diehard book person,
yes,
and you see these dates, that might be upsetting to you, or you might be like, well, that's not how it happens in the books. But he's doing that on purpose and trying to obey by the rules of the world that he's created.
Well, we have his blessing. He's totally on board with the movies and with this show. And I mean, me as a diehard Stephen King fan and purist, and this whole universe ties in with The Dark Tower as well, another Stephen King story that also involves the Macroverse and Maturin the Turtle and all these same characters. So I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I'm okay with these changes because it is fiction, but I mean, mainly because I just love good stories and I love, seeing what can be done with stories. And this is a good opportunity to say that, I would welcome, and I think Lindsay would too, any different opinions. If you have a well thought out argument of why, this is not a good idea, or about the change of the Losers Club from 7 to 4, let us know. Lindsay's, website is one of my stories. I'm Sweet Child of Time. I honestly love a well thought out opposite opinion. So if you have that, let us know. I mean, don't come at us with something like, who's running this clown show? Andy Spaghetti or whatever. I mean, well thought out arguments are welcome.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only thing that was initially confusing to me as I was kind of doing research and I came across the black spot, that the black spot in the books was 1930 and here it was 1962. And the black spot is kind of mentioned in the context of possibly being on the show. So the events themselves, now, the events are going to have to make sense in the context of history, but lynchings and KKK stuff, that happened up until, the 1970s, 1980s. So it still works. It's not totally out of left field that this would be relevant for 1962 as well as 1930. But I think that could be the only thing that throws things off, because there are events in history that the dates have been changed. So I think that's the only thing that could be a little confusing about it as people are trying to figure out where in this history are we.
I would argue that this is a better time period to put the black spot, because the black spot in the book happened in the 30s. And of course, there was racial tension in the 30s. In the 60s, during the civil rights movements, when people were seeing, black businesses as encroaching on them, and the news and the media was being very inclusive and showing, trying to show unity. And a lot of people were against that in Derry, Maine. So I think it's kind of appropriate that it happens in the 60s because it's like a backlash. Like you're a well-versed student of the civil rights movement. Like you've done some deep research on that. Like those feelings, I think, come out and they make a lot of sense to happen along this storyline, the black spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just watching the movies, too, it was interesting because the bullies in the miniseries were wearing leather jackets and 50s gear. And the bullies in the other one, the guy had like a mullet. And so like the clothing of especially the bullies like Henry Bowers and all them was much different. So it was
When you say a mullet, how would you categorize them? Are they seeming like hippie-ish or no?
Mullet would be business in the front, party in the back.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, they're not wearing leather jackets. They're wearing like Letterman jackets.
They're not wearing leather jackets. He was wearing like a sleeveless shirt and these jeans, and especially like Beverly. I noticed Beverly Marsh's clothing was very 90s. She was wearing like these kind of Steve Madden boots and almost grunge clothing. So
okay.
Because I had just watched the other movie, watched the movie so close together that it just struck me as, wait a second. I was assuming while I was watching it that it was happening during the 50s.
Right.
And it wasn't. So it was like I had to get. That's why I was so confused when I heard them playing Bust a Move. And I was like, why are they playing Bust a Move? That's totally out of left field. But then when I looked at, Bust a Move was released in 1989, and that's when the Kid Losers are around. So he had to really research what song they would be listening to on the radio that summer.
That makes more sense now, because when you said mullets, I was thinking this time period, 1962, and I was like,
yeah.
They didn't have mullets then, did they? That's what I was trying to picture in my head. What does a bully in 1962 look like? But yeah, an 80s bully with a mullet, listening to some young MC, that makes sense.
Torn jeans and Converse, that kind of thing. But, Converse kind of came back, but
it never went away, Lindsay.
Leave the Converse out of it. Leave the Converse out of the conversation.
Sweet Shot of Time is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the way we record Sweet Shot of Time. We hook up with our guests via video and we record it on audio. Recently, we've been doing video podcasts with the cast of Time Bandits. It's easy using Zencastr. You can record video or audio. You can also edit your podcast or your video via Zencastr. Join Zencastr using my promo code Sweet Child of Time and you can get 30% off Zencastr. If you're ready to start your podcast, it's time to share your story. Share it with Zencastr. That promo code once again, Sweet Child of Time at Zencastr.com.
All right, so we're going to move into some history of the town of Derry. So the town of Derry itself was created in a 1981 short story by Stephen King. It's not a real town, although some people might argue that it is, and that it's been mentioned since 1981, and it's the last book that he set in Derry was 11/22/63, which was a 2011 publication. Mm-hmm. But it's the main city, not the only city that Stephen King revisits over and over again. But I was looking through the list of either, books set in Derry or books where Derry is mentioned. Right. And I would say there's probably more books that are on the list than not on the list.
I mean, probably not as many as Castle Rock, because that's like where most of his stuff happens. But yeah, Derry has popped up a ton since its inception in the 1700s.
And it's interesting that, in 1982, after The Bird and the Album, the next, just as a fun fact, and then I'm going to move on from the Stephen King part of it. But the fun fact is the next book that it was mentioned in was 1982, which is The Running Man. And a new movie version of that is coming out this year, which I didn't realize was a Stephen King book. Mm-hmm. Or Richard Bachman book.
Richard Bachman, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so just a quick history of Derry, and then Steve's going to talk about the history of Pennywise and Matron the Turtle and all these people. So the town was founded in 1741 as Derry Township, and there were 340 people that disappeared. Then in 1851, we have John Markson, who killed his entire family with poison and then gobbled an entire mushroom to kill himself. So kind of bleak
mushroom
there.
that causes like muscle paralysis, very painful death.
Right.
And I want to say there's 340 people that disappeared in 1741. That was the entire township. The whole town disappeared. Right. Croatan style.
Yeah, exactly. Like North Carolina, the lost colony.
That was It first happened in Derry, apparently.
Yeah. Then in 1864, so I wonder when all these people disappeared, how did people come back? We'll never know, I guess. Okay.
It has a healthy population. I'll talk about that too.
120 people in 1864, 120 people, 50 kids and 70 adults were shot. Only 10 kids survived and 1 adult by a gang called Derry Padrinos, which is ran by Confederate sympathizers. So the history of politics in this town started off with a bang.
Yep.
Then in 1879, we had remains found of a crew of 9 lumberjacks who were snowed in at a camp in the Upper Kenduskeag. I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's a real... The what?
It's just simply Kenduskeag.
Okay. The canal, which is a real place in Maine, and all 9 were hacked to pieces, which I guess is where we get our nice lumberjacks statue.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lumber town. It has been like the whole town. I mean, the whole time. They talk about how it's always been a lumber town and how like the Derry Library is like the recycling plant because all those trees get turned into books for Will Hanlon.
Mm-hmm. Then in 1900, we have 5 people who were murdered by the Derry Padrinos back again.
Yep.
And in 1902, the Derry Padrinos were murdered by Pennywise. And then in 1906, on Easter Sunday, 102 people killed during the Kitchener Ironworks Explosion during an Easter egg hunt. Then 1935, the Bradley Gang were executed by a group of vigilantes in a shootout downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the Black Spot and Mike Hanlon's parents dying in a fire. So that's kind of on paper what people might see at the library, except for all the stuff about Pennywise, which wouldn't be there. It would be all unsolved mystery of how this happened. And Steve's going to fill in those blanks for us about the real history of Derry.
Okay, well, apparently... I'm stumbling at my words here. This is a hard one to kind of wrap your head around because it's very mystic. There's an ancient entity that came from the Macroverse. So first off, what is the Macroverse? According to Stephen King, it's a universe that Maturin the Turtle burped out one day, and that became the Macroverse. Simply said.
So you're saying that this Maturin the Turtle is the original entity, the creator. Okay.
Is the creator, the good creator. Mm-hmm. Because with every good, there's always going to be evil. So there is always a dark side to the Macroverse, which is come to be known. Maturin has always referred to that dark side as it. So that's what it gets its name from. It feeds primarily on the fears of people and the fears and insecurities and the hyped up emotions of people. Because children, apparently, according to the Stephen King lore, because kids feel emotions more purely and have more intense fears and a more intense belief system, they're more apt to be targets for it. It needs to feed, so to speak. It's like a bear. It hibernates. And about every 30 years or so is when it comes out of its den and feeds on mostly children, sometimes adults, mostly children. It came here through a comet that crashed on Earth. And just like the band Gwar, they also crashed on Earth millions of years ago and lived underneath the ice layer. And then in 1700, when that first dairy company, 1741, first pitched their forks into the town and started building the town Derry, that's when it awoke because they built the town Derry right on top of where it crash landed on Earth. It woke up. It was greedy. It ate up all those 340 people Lindsay talked about, and then it went to sleep. And every 27 or 30 years, it comes back. Sometime around the 1800s, it figured out that a really cool way to lure kids into it is by a clown, because generally it feeds off each person's individual fear. Like if it was like trying to come after me, it would take the form of like a stinging insect, a giant stinging insect of some sort. That's what it would look like to me, because that's one of my big fears. So a lot of kids are scared of clowns. But a lot of kids like clowns. Clowns have like this kind of dual personality. So it used the persona of a clown to lure kids. Even further so, this clown gave itself two names to use in like the human world. When he goes around and like interacts with adults, he might call himself Bob Gray. He's called himself that to Eddie Casbrook in the book and in the show. He introduced himself to Bob Gray, and he introduced himself as Bob Gray to Bill's little brother as well that got killed. So he's known as Bob Gray, but all the kids know him as Pennywise. He tries to appear as like an enticing clown, but we're scared of him. We're very scared of him. We've seen the movies and we've read the book. He's a very scary guy. Killing him or defeating him is pretty tough, because you have to be able to be steadfast and true of heart. And that's what I wanted to ask you about, Lindsay. I'm going to segue over to you, because in the book, the way that Bill battled, young Bill Denbrow, he battled it, was through this thing called the Ritual of Chud, and they mind locked with each other. So all the battle they did happened inside their heads, where they like yelled at each other with their minds and like put these visions at each other and stuff. How did they battle Pennywise or it in the book? I mean, like in the movie when they were kids.
Mm-hmm. So there's two different adaptations, and each of them handled that differently. In the miniseries, which I keep trying to remember what year it came out, but it was somewhere around the 1980s, 1990s, I think.
I think it was like 92, 93.
Yeah. So this is actually one of the reasons why I thought that original miniseries wasn't very good, is the scene that I'm going to describe to you. Okay. Because what happens in the miniseries is they get really mad that Pennywise has done all this, and it's turned into a spider. And what it shows them doing is basically, as adults, going up to this spider and like punching and kicking it like, and it looks really cheesy and stupid. It
sounds cheesy.
as a visual spectacle. Now, when I watched the whole thing, it worked better for me because of the emotion that I had attached to the characters at that point. Okay. Because I was just kind of watching it in clips on YouTube during a lunch break. So I wasn't really watching it a whole movie. And I want to say that I think that the miniseries is actually pretty good. You know, especially the one thing they got right was the chemistry between the adult actors, which I felt like was the weakest part of the newer movie.
Sure.
But in the original, I mean, the cast did a stunning job. So by me watching it, the scene went over better for me. But it essentially is them. They just go up and beat up on this giant spider puppet. And so it doesn't look very good. What they do in the newer movies is in a way a repeat. Like when they were kids, they used their imaginations to defeat Pennywise. Like Eddie says, "This is poison," and he points his inhaler and squirts it, and because he says that, it makes it happen. Or they have the little arrow from the little broken arrow from the house, and they're like, "This kills monsters." You know, it's like they believe it does. So what they end up doing as adults is they just yell insults at Pennywise until he feels offended, because each of them, but what I thought was cool about that, okay, so it does sound kind of silly. They're just like, "You're a clown, you're a clown, you're a clown," is that each of the losers we know is bullied a lot and picked on and made to feel really small. So they kind of realized, they said, their idea was, we were going to get Pennywise to come into this particular tunnel because he has to follow us. And when he goes into the tunnel, he'll get really small and then we can kill him. But Pennywise doesn't do that. He doesn't obey their plan. and they think to themselves, there's more than one way to make someone small, and each of them knows that. So they just yell insults at Pennywise and they make him small by calling him names. It's kind of like there's these very famous stories where somebody will say, like a giant, "Oh, I bet you're not that powerful because you can't make yourself into a tiny thing that's small enough to fit into this teapot." And in their pride, the monster will get all upset, and then they'll get in the teapot and they'll just smash it, you know? So it's like emotional abuse of Pennywise that allows them to kill him.
I mean, it's the same thing in the book, too. That's how they eventually did it. They would like confront him, be like, "We don't believe in you. You're not real. You don't scare me. You can't get to me." That's basically like was the gist of, their determination. That's how they kind of battled it. I guess similarly, they eventually had to I think crush his heart or something. I think that was key to getting to quote unquote getting rid of him for real. We know Pennywise, or the entity of it, keeps coming back. That's the whole point of this series and the Losers Club. And now this group from 1962 is, they don't want to just sit there and allow their friends to disappear and die. They want to go find it and confront it and get rid of it because the police won't do anything about it. That's the whole thing about Derry. We forgot is the town of Derry, when it wakes up, the town is asleep. Not asleep literally, but they don't pay attention to what's happening around them. A prime example is the silver dollar incident, which is where there was a union dispute, and one of the guys, a lumberjack, as we say, took an axe to a group of people in this bar, the Silver Dollar. While he was doing this, everybody else in the bar was not paying attention to it at all, as if it wasn't even happening. And the way they described it later was well, we didn't want to get involved because it was none of our business. So we were, in essence, it blinds people around them so it can allow these horrible things to happen.
So that only happens during the hibernation periods. I was thinking that kind of bad things happen in Derry. I thought it was always kind of like that, but you're saying that the adults go a little more asleep during the periods when Pennywise comes out. Did you get that from somewhere?
I just got that from my own belief. It just seemed to make sense to me that that's how it operated. But you're right. That's something that Will Hanlon told his son Mike is the soil in Derry is bad. This whole town is bad. The soil itself is rotten and bad. So that kind of leads to your theory. So I mean, it's up for debate. You've already convinced me that it's, the whole town all the time is is like that.
Well, I'm not saying that's what I believe necessarily. I kind of thought
it makes sense though.
That it was because it's almost like a chicken and egg situation. It's you're saying in the story, Pennywise lands, and this is just where he ends up. So you might say when Pennywise landed there, did he create the town and how bad it is, or did he just find the perfect town for him to be able to wreak his havoc? Because it does seem like that it's kind of a bad place in general. In the movies, we see Beverly Marsh is being tortured by the bully gang, and an adult drives by who could have stopped to help her, and the adult just turns their head. So I'm kind of so I'm kind of wondering if if the adults are more laid back and non-intervention-y during these, or if they're always that way. Because we know that there's bad stuff going on. We have racism, obviously. We've got PTSD from the war. Henry Bowers, his dad is abusive towards him. We learn that his dad's got this PTSD. So there's sexual abuse, there's physical abuse, there's emotional abuse. We've got Munchausen by proxy from the Eddie's mom. So we've got some pretty bad parents. It's almost in the world of Dark, just to go back to that, you had sort of
perfect example. Yes.
You had sort of trauma happening all over the place, bad things happening. And would that trauma, those bad things only be happening during these periods? So I don't know.
I mean, in Dark, you got that power plant, and that could have something to do with it. I mean, we know that,
Yeah.
it's different and dark, but what you were just saying, you've convinced me to make a great argument for this because he crash landed and then his entity was there for millions of years in the soil.
Right.
The townsfolk that came there and established Derry woke him up. But like Mike's dad says, Derry is evil in the soil, like a black mold situation. Like if you live in a house with black mold, it's going to affect you, maybe even mentally, or like a Chernobyl situation where like the ground itself is tainted and like everything that comes from this area, i.e. the people and the animals and the food that's grown there, all has a bit of that in there. I've just convinced myself, Lindsay.
And then the people who like want to fight for their kids and were like, I can't stay here, they would leave. Other people stay and become more hopeless every year or something like that.
Right.
Or
that's right.
This is just as good as it's going to get. One interesting thing I wanted, here I go with the interesting again. You mentioned Maturin the turtle. In the newer movie, in It Part 2, we had Mike Hanlon. They show this incident where he goes outside the town and he interacts with an indigenous group. And when he's recalling that, he tells Bill about it. And this is where I went. He says, they gave me their Maturin. So that was a drink that they gave him before he went into that weird kind of trance. So they named this drink after the turtle, I guess, because that's how they spelled it.
Maybe the other way around, because, Maturin the turtle didn't name himself that. That's just what we earthlings name it, when we talk about it. We don't know what his true name is. So, yeah, I think the drink is definitely an Easter egg. Speaking of which, I hope to make a segment each week we can call maybe the Kitchener Ironworks Easter egg hunt, where we talk about all the cool Easter eggs that we see in the show each episode, because I know they're going to drop about a dozen at least, because all Stephen King properties do that.
Yeah. Yes, you have some interesting ideas for our format. One more piece of kind of literary history about Derry I want to discuss, and I was going to go into some landmarks.
Okay.
But I thought this was interesting. Now, I don't know much about Stephen King's politics. Maybe you do, but there's a story called Gwendy's Button Box. So I saw this quote from Wikipedia and I thought it was funny or interesting. So it says, according to Gwendy Peterson, who's the main character of Gwendy's Button Box, during a political campaign, she failed to reach any sympathy from the people of Derry, for its population is mostly Republican with strong anti-LGBTQ sentiments. So that was a character he put in his book that Derry is Republican and that they're homophobic.
I definitely get that sense too, like the way he describes characters. I mean, because I just recently have reread the book, like within the past week. So I definitely got that sense. And Stephen King is like he wears it on his sleeve that he's a left-wing liberal. Like he calls himself a loony left-wing liberal, I believe is the phrase that he uses. He gets in Twitter spats with Trump and JD Vance on regular basis. And I always got the sense as a kid reading his books that he was definitely very progressive the way he would handle things. Like on the face when you're reading it, especially the Mike Hanlon chapters, you're going to see the N-word about like 100 times. And for me, it's unnecessary to write it that many times, but it's always in the context of, how it's not right and how his politics always seem to lean on the side of acceptance. I should say that. And he likes to bring in different types of characters to interact with each other in interesting ways. And more than likely, his characters are also going to be accepting people that are very progressive, but he always likes to throw in a hardcore, like conservative. I won't say Republican, but a hardcore conservative type that is not accepting and is stuck in the past and is there as like a catalyst for conflict, I suppose. But I mean, reading in his voice, like as Mike Hanlon, or as, many of his, not just that, but I mean, I can't reference all of his books at this point because I haven't, I just finished reading it. I'm not going to speak for any other books that I haven't read recently, but I'm pretty sure that you'll find a lot of progressive values. Like, I wouldn't say like small amounts. I would say large amounts that hit you over the head.
So I always thought he was more centrist. I don't know that for sure. You might know more about his politics than I do. I do know that some of the things he has in his book are troubling.
Yeah.
And not just from the perspective of, yes, what's troubling things happen, disturbing things happen, but there's a lot of magical Black characters. And I even coined a phrase, magical girl character, because
yeah, that's right.
There's that, this kind of cringeworthy part that happens after the ritual of Chud in the books.
Yes.
That it's like, oh, the Beverly had to have sex with all 7 losers to keep everybody together. Like that.
We don't want to talk about that. That didn't happen. I skipped that chapter in the book.
Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe, I don't know. You can decide if you want to edit it out, but I just think it is something I didn't know was in the books, and then I found it, and I thought, yes, it's really disturbing, but I also found it interesting because about that same time, I was hearing about the magical Black character and how that functions and how many times Stephen King has that type of character in one of his books. And I'm like, well, he's doing the same thing for women, is that, you're going to put her through this incident as like the healing person that has to help the group by doing this or that. So it was something I don't like, and I don't think it's necessarily progressive to put that in your books. So
I don't disagree with you. That's why I say your mom was probably correct when you were a kid to put that book away, because there was a lot of really like shocking and not right things. You're not wrong with anything you said, but I do think that the way that he writes, he always tries to bring conversation to the table, always tries to bring a different perspective to the table. He does the same thing to the Jewish community through the voice of Stan Uris, and it does seem disrespectful. And there's a lot of stereotypes that are thrown in there. And they also talk about how Stan Uris's parents have dealt with those stereotypes. And there's always another side to, it's always not just one-sided. He usually brings you multiple perspectives. And I think for that, I've always felt he was a more progressive writer. He is your classic guy from the North that like, I'm not racist. I got Black friends, kind of like you want to roll your eyes at some of like the quote unquote progressive stuff he spiels. Cause he's like a 70, 80-year-old man who's changed throughout the years, but he has tackled all of these points within his own interviews where people have confronted him with those exact same points that you make. And he has pretty succinct answers, and he doesn't really make apologies necessarily, but he does have valid responses to all that.
I would probably never confront him about it. I would just complain about him behind his back. But
like we're doing right now.
I will say, I know that I think there's something beautiful like underneath. Like, there's what happens on the surface, and then there's kind of like what it represents. So I do think there's something beautiful and true about the fact that Pennywise is fueled on fear. They defeated him, but then they scattered him. And I think that is something also we see in the Bible and the Christ narrative. Like after Christ died, the apostles were scattered and didn't know what to do. And so they had this moment of empowerment where they won, but then they all got lost, I guess, and were not sure. And it's bringing them finding each other that helps them to get out of the cave. And I think there's something beautiful about that, but I feel like it pushed the envelope a little to put that in. But I understand that he's doing things symbolically that are very moving. And so I respect him as an author. I just thought that was really troubling. And you agree with me, so we can move on.
Yeah, I was reading his book. I was like, you're canceled. You're canceled. Like every 5th page, I was like, you're canceled for that, buddy. Like I canceled him in my mind. But I mean, all in all, I forgive him.
I'm forgiving him as long as we don't have to sit through it in the movies. Like, don't put that in there, Andy Muschietti. Like, don't put it in your show. We can let it go.
Yeah.
Okay. This last kind of section I wanted to just talk about is the places of Derry. And the reason I wanted to go over these is, they might be ones we all recognize, but I think landmarks are important. Again, going back to Dark, in Dark, you have the caves, you have the school, you have the police station, you have these places that are revisited over and over again, the hospital. And they become that much more rich because they're visited again. And so, especially since in watching the 2017 movie and watching the Muschietti movies, I was like, I bet he's using the same set that he used on the movie to do the TV show because it looks pretty identical to what I saw in the trailer.
I thought so too.
Right. So he's probably going to reuse some of these spots. Maybe we're going to see them again. And we even see some of them in the trailer and the publicity for the show.
I think it'll be cool to see some of these spots. Like we're going to see them in 1962 first, but we'll hopefully see these exact same spots, how they looked back in 1935. Something I wanted to mention about the town of Derry before you do this, because we're talking about locations within Derry. Derry itself, I got the population from Mr. Keene himself, the drugstore guy. He said at the time of the Bradley gang, when that happened in 1929, the town of Derry had a population of 20,000. So it's not exactly a small town like you might think. And I looked at, I live in Virginia. Lindsay is in North Carolina. In Virginia, it's the exact same size as Culpeper, Virginia, 20,000. In North Carolina, we got Elizabeth City, the exact same thing, a population of 20,000. So this is the type of, size city we're talking about. I've always pictured Derry as a super small town, and apparently I'm wrong in that.
Yeah. Well, I always considered it a small town too. That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So the first one is the Barrens. Okay. The Barrens is home base for the Losers Club. That's where they created the dam. There's the landfill, and Henry Bowers was washed out into the Barrens by a flash flood. Is there anything else you remember about the Barrens?
Not necessarily. I mean, I know we're definitely going to see them again because it's a time. Not time specific. The way the town is laid out, the Barrens are always going to be there and probably always be part of the plot, as well as the next thing that Lindsay's going to say.
Yeah, I do wonder if the new losers or the old losers will be playing at the Barrens, right? Okay, so the sewers.
Yes, that's it. There's always going to be a sewer system in every city, and that's where
Pennywise
loves to live.
Where Pennywise lives, who doesn't want to live in a sewer? We actually had sewers in my hometown, Lafayette, Indiana, and we used to call them the tunnels. And we would go as a high schooler. It was like, oh, let's go to the tunnels and walk inside. And then people were like, twice a day they wash these out. And I'm like, all right, let's leave because that was really scary. So I can't imagine going into these sewers and really exploring. That would be really scary.
I've got two things to say now then. I know we're trying to rear down here, but when I was a young child, we used to play in the creek and play in the sewers as well. I'm talking like when I was like 8 or 9. And I stepped in a piece of glass when we were going through like one of those concrete pipes, just like in it. We were like going under the street in the concrete pipe, stepped on a piece of glass. I was barefoot, of course. And so I needed stitches. So of course I was in a lot of pain. And the girl that was with me was like, wash it out. You got to wash it out with plenty of water. So I was using the sewer water to wash out my wound. It was fine in all because, I got, antiseptics later, but that was a really bad move.
You had your own Eddie Casbrack friend there, like telling you about.
I guess so. And there was like a Richie type there that had cigarettes that was trying to give us cigarettes as well. But my occupation is water and wastewater. So this is kind of what we do. And in one of our sewer systems, when I was driving through last week, somebody put a clown in one of our sewer grates. So it's Halloween, of course. So yeah, that's what I said too. I was like, that's not fun. I don't like this.
Okay, the kissing bridge. The kissing bridge is where Henry tries to put his initials into Ben's stomach, and it runs over the canal. And so we might see the kissing bridge again. It's also where Beverly was stopped by the bullies. So that there's been a couple of things with the Losers Club that happened near the kissing bridge, and I'm wondering if that's going to show up in the show.
It's also where the skateboard kid at the end of the book, he watched the whole town like kind of like get deconstructed because the town was like leveled or something during some flood. And the Kissing Bridge is where the skateboard kid and Bill Denbrow watched that happen and went, wow. So we're going to see that again.
Okay, the movie theater. I don't know if the movie theater is in the books, but it's definitely in the movies, and we saw it it's going to be in the trailer, and it's in the lead post from the pilot. Every town needs a movie theater, Steve.
I mean, I agree. Why are you telling me? I agree with you. This movie theater in Derry is the same one that Will and his son Mike saw that Rodin movie. That's where they talked about that at.
That does make me curious because in Durham, where I'm from, our movie theater has a balcony because it was segregated when it was built.
Right. Okay.
So it does make me wonder if the movie theater was segregated when it was built because of the town. And yeah.
We have one of those too in Richmond, Virginia. Yay. The West Hampton Theater.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, they're not segregated anymore.
That's right. We all know this.
All right. The Derry Standpipe. The standpipe is a large water tower, and several children drowned in the tank at one point. So this is another bad thing that happened in Derry. Derry Standpipe, interestingly enough, is also a real thing that exists in Maine. And I think it might even be called the Derry Standpipe, but it's a standpipe. Stephen King finds it terrifying, obviously, because he put it in his books.
Is it that where Mike had his first incident with it as the bird?
Yeah, well, this is he sees the bird at the standpipe. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I got it right. Okay.
Yes. We also have the drugstore. The drugstore is where Eddie got his inhalers.
Mr. Keen's drugstore now.
And it's also where the Losers Club in the movie first meets Beverly because she's buying tampons and the boys are buying medical equipment to try to patch up Ben. And Beverly has already met Ben and she, goes to hang out with him. But I do wonder if the drugstore is going to show up.
It's got to. I mean, it's shown up in multiple books as well. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Keen has shown up in multiple books. So I bet we're going to be seeing him in that name as well.
All right. This next one, I think you might have some stuff to say, which is the Neibolt house.
Sure. Everybody loves the Neibolt house. Multiple bad things have happened there. And that's the original house when that the first colony of 340 people got taken away. There was one particular house that was burnt completely to the ground unexplainably, and Neibolt House stands at that same spot. It was a transient house. It was near the bus station, like when it was like a newer town, and people would ride the train, and they would just be stopping in Derry just for a layover. Transients and hobos would hang around the Neibolt House because it was always vacant. No one ever wanted to live there. No one was ever clear who owned it. It was just a house that you avoided. We also skipped over the ironworks as well, the Kitchener Ironworks, which I'm positive.
I thought we already talked about the ironworks, but we can talk about it if you want.
We did talk about it, but it's a place in Derry. I think we're going to see it again. Mm-hmm. And one of the main reasons I wanted to bring it, because I'm sure we'll see it again because it comes up in 11/22/63. Because, Richie and Beverly are name dropped. The main character of that book meets Richie and Beverly, and he stops by the ironworks as well and talks about how creepy this place is. And he was wondering, what kind of place this could be. Us Stephen King readers were like, he, I know what this is. But yeah, it's fun.
I wonder if this house is the same one that was for the movie with Alfred Hitchcock. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. This is terrible. Where's the movie?
Room with a View?
No, the movie with the shower scene.
Psycho?
Psycho, yes. I wonder if it's the same house that was used in Psycho.
Wait, what's the connection? I don't get it.
I mean, on the movie set itself, not anything to do. Oh. There's no connection between those two. But it also is there's an entrance to the sewers in the Neibolt house for some reason. So that's
the sewers
weird.
Lead. That's right. Neibolt House at one point was like a pump station for the sewers. Like there was like a pump station that was in there that was like quickly abandoned, like way back when. So there's still like, the sewers basically lead or can lead to the Neibolt House directly. Like that's how you can access the sewers without anybody really knowing.
I thought the entrance to the ironworks is also by the Neibolt House.
Not sure of the proximity.
Yeah, because it's called the Well House.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so it's the pump station, the Well House, right? Okay, so this next one, there's two more. So one is the Derry Library.
Oh boy, Lindsay. You love it.
The Derry Library. Every town needs a library. That's where Mike Hanlon hangs out. Now, there was a little bit of a wrestling match, I guess, about who hangs out at the library more. Mike or Ben, because in the second movie, Ben is like the librarian. Some people were mad about that because that was Mike's role to be the town historian.
Come on,
Ben
it's
was the
architect.
He didn't need to also be the librarian.
I mean, they're friends. They shouldn't fight about this, or they should unite. Like both of them can be librarians, right? Wouldn't they love working together?
Okay, and then the last one that's a place that is in the trailer that somehow is going to connect is Shawshank Prison.
Right, yeah. So how does that connect exactly? I'm trying to... it has nothing to do with the Macroverse, because I'm thinking about the Shawshank Redemption, of course, which has nothing to do with the Macroverse. It's not really like it does have a magical black character in the Shawshank Redemption, so we're going to check that box. But no Macroverse stuff is happening.
I think in the copy, what I read is that Dick Halloran tells Mike Hanlon about Shawshank and that there's a person there who's being held even though they are innocent. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm really curious because they've been publicizing that there's two books that are connected to the series besides it. There's The Shining with Dick Halloran's character, and then there's Shawshank. So somehow the Shawshank is being brought in as a location. Now I thought maybe Henry Bowers is being held in Shawshank.
No, he was in
a mental hospital, not a regular prison.
So if it's somebody that's innocent, I'm guessing like somebody was framed for some Pennywise murders and ended up in Shawshank, and maybe Dick Halloran is going to somehow help get them out somehow. Like I see the tie into The Shining, obviously. Shawshank Prison is a place, so it's tied in here. We're going to have a character that's going to visit it, because I think we saw the bus, right? The bus said Shawshank on the side of it. 11/22/63 being in this same universe is interesting because the Macroverse has time travel abilities. So I doubt that's going to come into play, but it's a possibility. And then the Dark Tower, that's another book that is also directly tied in, but I do not see how that could have anything to do with this storyline. It would not fit at all. So maybe an Easter egg. We might see like a Roland action figure or something, or perhaps like Abigail will like be in the background or something. But I don't see how they could tie it in. Shawshank, yes. What's the other one they're definitely tying in? The Shining.
The Shining.
With
just remember everything with an SH.
Okay, all right. Steve Barnes as well.
I'm wondering if somebody gets, is somebody going to get framed for the black spot, or the wrong person gets framed for for that fire.
I think Andy Dufresne himself might show up, or one of these characters.
I think that was already debunked. I think somebody thought, is it Andy Dufresne? And they were like, no, the time-wise, it doesn't add up with when Andy Dufresne was in Shawshank. I can't remember. But I think it's going to be a fun show to kind of watch and see how it all unspools. Let's talk about these angry Redditors, Steve. Okay, we sort of hinted at it that Muschietti is off for using this plot of kids working together because that's what the losers did right. So how can they do that again? Why are they reusing that plot? So what you were starting to tell me how you don't agree with that, or you do agree with that. I can't remember now which one it was.
No, I think it kind of makes sense because they made such a big point about how 7 and having 7 people battle it is a really important number and a really important number of people or individuals to battle it or to face it. So we got these 4 main guys or 2 guys, 2 gals. I just really believe that they're going to be joined by Mike and Ray and Rich, and they're going to be 7 of them. And they won't be the losers club, but it'd be like a quasi losers club, like they'll have their own little name. I mean, I don't know if they'll be losers or not because I guess they will be. I don't know. But I know that like usually Pennywise, it likes to target, kids that might be more introverted, might have a more active imagination, might be more prone to things like, ADHD or bipolar, unique, maybe not as, I don't know, disadvantaged perhaps. That's like a target that he's going to go after because he wants easy prey. He wants weakness. Mm-hmm. So he's going to try to go after easy targets. He's not going to go after the captain of the football team who's not scared of anything. He's going to go after the wimpy kids. They won't be called the Losers Club. We've already seen that. What would it be called? Let's see.
Dorks. I don't know. What did they?
The dorky dorks.
I mean, it didn't strike me that necessarily that the kids in the trailer looked dorky at all. So it is kind of interesting how it's going to play out. I wish they would release the characters' full names. There's on IMDb. All we have is we have Teddy, Phil, Lily, and Ronnie.
Right.
But, besides that, we just have the list of actors. And, we know that Bill Skarsgård is returning as Pennywise. And then we know that Taylor Page plays Charlotte Hanlon. And Chris Chalk plays Dick Halloran. And Jovan Adepo plays Leroy Hanlon.
That's our man. That's our man. He played Benji from His Three Daughters. You remember that?
Well, I put down he was in the movie Fences. Overlord, which is a movie I still haven't seen. I really want to. It's a fantasy Nazi picture where a guy is escaping from a Nazi prison, I believe, called Overlord. And then Babylon, he was in that film.
I know him as Benji.
Yeah.
Natasha Lyonne's going to be mad at you that you don't remember her boyfriend because he was.
I didn't realize that. Yeah, I didn't recognize that guy. He's played like supporting characters,
right? Mostly
minor characters. So I haven't familiar with his name yet.
He's top billed in this though. This is like his big breakout.
Yeah. And Chris Chalk he was playing Dick Halloran. He's born in Nashville, North Carolina. So you should just know that he's a North Carolina boy.
I mean, I got some connections to these people too. Like Taylor Page, who plays Charlotte Hanlon. She was in The Toxic Avenger, the remake recently. Joshua Oddkick, he's playing an unknown guy, but he was in The Long Walk, which just came out.
Yes, did you see The Long Walk?
I'm dying to see it. Have not seen it yet. I want to watch it on a treadmill. I want to do it.
Okay, I want to say something about him, all right?
Okay,
Jack Ojic, or however you say his name, The Long Walk, you're correct. He is the only actor that I think that says, like, he's in every episode. A lot of these other characters, if you look at the credits now, sometimes IMDb credits are incorrect. We already established that. But he's one of the top billed characters. So I'm really curious. He's an indigenous young man. So I'm kind of, I guess, does that mean they're going to hang out with the indigenous people group at some point? Like they're going to bring them into that? I was watching the trailer. I was like, okay, is he playing one of the army people? I was just curious.
He doesn't have a character name in IMDb. It just says unknown. Like Madeline Stowe is in this. Like I loved her in 12 Monkeys. She's in this. She's a pretty big star, but she also plays an unknown character. And Oppenheimer. I know you loved Oppenheimer last year. My dude from Oppenheimer is in this. James Remar plays General Shaw. So those are my people. Those are the guys I'm going to be looking at going, okay, I know y'all. And Lachlan Miller, one of the kids who plays Ray, he was in The Boys and The Madness, 2 shows which I really liked. So these 6 people, and I guess Skarsgård too. I mean, he's great. All right. We love him. I'm going to like him too. But these are the people I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah. I will say overall, besides all this stuff, I think the vibes I'm getting from the trailer are, and again, there was a show that was about the Great Migration. That was a horror show. Did you watch that one, Steve?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I can't remember the name now, but
the
it was
Migration?
No, but it's like about a black family in the 1960s that moves to a new neighborhood. And it's all white neighbors, and it's like the horror of being like, here they are excited about buying this home, and then the neighbors slowly but surely start, treating them really poorly. But it's a horror lens. I can't remember the name of the series, but it was really good. I watched some of it and then got traumatized by the show, so I didn't finish that one. But it does, I think there's going to be a lot to do with like systemic racism in this one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I've come to the end of my show notes here, Steve. So is there anything else you wanted to discuss? I'm sure you always have something up your sleeve.
I mean, it seems like I do, but no, we've gone through everything. We've gone longer than I thought we would go too. So I'm ready to wrap it up and start watching this show and start recapping it.
Well, you were going to ask me what my form of Pennywise would be. Should we end it there?
I said that I was going to be, I wasn't going to be. I was going to be scared of a big giant like yellow jacket or wasp, and it was not even giant. Like if it was just like the size of a dog, that would just scare the bejesus out of me, and I would like freeze up. So, what would Pennywise look like if he was going to come to your house and scare you in the middle of the night? What form would it take?
Well, right now, I'm going to say that it would take the form of squirrels in my attic, because I think there are squirrels in my attic right now, Steve, and they're torturing me.
They're awful. We have squirrels in the attic of our garage, and they wreak havoc. They will use everything to make their nests. I implore you to get animal control to get them out of there.
I called animal control, and they told me that nothing can get through, and that it must be mice. So I'm trying to get it worked out, but I feel like
traps.
That's bad. But
set traps.
The other thing you might use for me again is one of my greatest fears of life is dirty bathrooms. So I feel like if Pennywise was in the format of a giant toilet, or like a toilet that keeps overflowing with like brown water, that would be terrible.
I mean, the super theme, that's perfect. I mean, he would love that. He loves you.
That's right. I'm one of his perfect victims. Let's not talk about this anymore. So I'm starting to get grossed out.
Let's talk about squirrel traps in your attic. Get them tomorrow.
Well, Steve, this has been fun. I'm looking forward to watching the show. It starts in just a few days. And just a reminder that we as a pair are going to be recapping the episode. So look for Thursday. You'll be able to watch the show on Sunday, and then just 4-5 days later, you'll be able to watch a recap before that next episode comes in. So we hope you'll tune in for our notes.
Our notes and my wife's wise ass comments, because she's gonna be watching as well, and she always has funny comments that I'll bring to the table.
And if you have wise ass comments, you can send them to sweetchildoftimepod@gmail.com.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, yay, I did it. Okay.
Perfect. First try.
So what sort of sign off should we have, Steve?
Something scary. Let's see. I have to think on my feet here. I said welcome to Derry. So maybe we can say, what's the opposite of welcome? Like I guess you say goodbye, right?
Kicked out?
Goodbye to Derry, everyone, from Sweet Child of Time and one of my stories. Goodbye to Derry. How's that?
Goodbye to all those people I've trusted. I'm trying to quote a song here, but anyway, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.